Hi, Roy here, and welcome again to another edition of the Right Has Left podcast. I am your host, Roy Garden, and as always, as each and every week on these podcasts, we take a look at the past news events that's happening in the Trump administration, and a lot of times I'm giving you late breaking news even before the other major networks discuss it on a Monday, because I tape these podcasts on a Saturday morning so I can bring you all the latest breaking news as quick as possible. Having said that, we are going to go ahead and get started. And on our first late breaking news is, of course, as the recent hearings have concluded with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the uproar that's going on in the House and the Senate, because many of them, both on both sides, the Democrats and the Republicans, are very concerned about the recent events that's going on in the Health and Human Services, as well as the CDC, and Kennedy's recent discussions about inoculations and what people need and don't need. So Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy doubled down on false claims about vaccines and claimed he isn't limiting access to COVID shots during his Senate testimony this past Wednesday, as senators grilled him on his sweeping changes to immunization policies and federal agencies. And I will be discussing later on this podcast about what's going on here in the state of Florida and the developments about this very subject. But Kennedy did say he supports a statement made by a newly appointed member of a key government vaccine panel that mRNA vaccines pose a dangerous risk to people. He has no facts to back that up other than his conspiracy theories, but that's what he's saying. Now, numerous studies have demonstrated that shots using mRNA technology, including COVID vaccines from Pfizer and Moderna, are safe and effective, just so you know that. And serious side effects have happened in extremely rare cases. Now, Senator Michael Bennet, Democrat from Colorado, noted that the committee member, Dr. Rezvez Levi, has said that evidence is mounting that mRNA vaccines cause serious harm, including death, especially among young people, apparently referring to a post penned on Levi's X account. Now, because of that, Kennedy, of course, appointed Levi to the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, which advises the Senators for Disease Control and Prevention on vaccine recommendations and insurance coverage. Kennedy said he wasn't aware of Levi's comments, but added, I agree with it, even though I'm not aware of it. He also claimed that anyone who could get a COVID booster shot, while also acknowledging that access depends on the state and that the government no longer recommends the vaccines for healthy people. And the Food and Drug Administration approved a new round of COVID shots with a new limits, only clearing them for adults age 65 and older and people with a medical condition that puts them at risk of a severe illness. Now, having talked about all of that, as you're well aware of, this guy here has been known to come out with a lot of conspiracy theories in the relationship to what's going on with our health and as far as vaccines and inoculations. What is dangerous about this, and also what's going on here in the state of Florida, is the fact that, when kids enter the school district system, having shots for things like mumps, measles, and other contagious diseases, to me, is very important. And now they just want to do away with all that. And, of course, you've got a lot of parents who are, I understand the right of parents to make their own decisions. I get that. But when they make decisions that may be costly to the health of their own children, and then if they get sick and then spread those perhaps contagious diseases to other children, you're going to have some major outbreaks, like what happened in Texas with the measles. You're going to get a lot of misinformed parents who are making very wrong choices for their children. That's my take on it. I've got a lot of grandchildren who are in the school system. Fortunately, I've got a stepdaughter who is a registered nurse, and she understands these things, and her children are being taken care of and getting those shots. I am very concerned about what's going to happen for those who may perhaps make some wrong decisions. And that's, that's important to me, is to making sure that people make informed decisions, because you're going to get a lot of parents who are not going to give their kids any shots whatsoever. They're going to get sick, and then they're going to say, what happened? Gee, I wonder what, Anyway, there you go. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his conspiracy theories, and this guy is in charge now of deciding what the future is going to be for the health of our children. And you're going to have insurance company now going to start denying certain things because, they take a lot of their advice from the Health and Human Services. And if Kennedy says, you don't need to do it, and you've got some parent who maybe wants to get a shot for their kid that was normally covered by health insurance, now they're going to have to cough up the money to pay for that. And everything is going to hell in a handbasket really quick. Right? Let's move on. So, in other news, President Donald Trump recently said defense is too defensive. Did you get that? The word defense is too defensive. So, as the United States wants to be on the offense as well. So, President Donald Trump recently said defense is too defensive, as the U.S. wants to be offensive as well. So, he just went ahead and is now going to call the Defense Department back to the Department of War. Yeah, that is right. He wants to go back to the Department of War. His latest effort to project an image of toughness for America's military. We love war. Let's go to war. The Republican president can't formally change the name without legislation, which is his administration is requesting from Congress. So, yeah, let's go ahead and change this, the Department of Defense, back to the Department of War. In the meantime, Trump will authorize the Pentagon to use secondary titles so the department can go by its original name. The Department of War was created back in 1789, the same year that the United States Constitution took effect. It was renamed by law in 1947, 2 years after the end of World War II. Now you're going to ask yourself, why that? Well, think about it. We lost a lot of lives in World War II, and even though the United States took the lead on ending World War II, it was thought, okay, enough is enough. So let's go ahead and take it back to the Department of Defense. And that way it shows that we are on the defense. We will protect the United States and their allies on a defensive measure. When you use the name Department of War, it sounds like you're a warmonger, that you actually love and want to have war when you say Department of War. Does it put the fear of anybody else in the world? Perhaps. But, there was a reason psychologically to have a name Department of Defense instead of the Department of War. Think about the two names. It sounds like you're aggressive, doesn't it? It kind of sounds like North Korea. It kind of sounds like Russia, doesn't it? That you are enticing. Come on, bring it on. Let's do this. Let's go a couple of rounds. So, think about this, folks. You really want to think about the psychological effect of saying things like Department of War and Department of Defense, because it's you want other countries to respect you, but you don't want to think that you're a warmonger. So, put that in your little pipe and smoke it for just a little while. All right, Kristi Noem, she's back whining and bellyaching over her Caramel Garcia interview that she did on Face the Nation with CBS. Now, here's what's going on with this little quick story. She did an interview on Face the Nation, which is a news program on CBS. And again, she's whining and bellyaching that they edited the content, so it made it sound like she was being aggressive and that, over the deportation of Garcia. Now, what has happened here is, as you're well aware of, CBS is supposed to be basically kissing Trump's ring. As you know, they did a lot of behind the scenes so, they could do their merger with Paramount and Skydance. And that occurred. So they thought after that, and after Trump allowed the FCC, which he now controls basically with his own people, for that merger, that CBS would now be kissing his golden ring like they're supposed to. Well, here you have Christie, who got upset because she did an interview on Face the Nation and they edited it. And of course, with my experience in journalism and my experience of working in television, you're going to have a lot of news packages that are going to be edited for content and for time. Okay, it's not necessarily they're trying to make a story lean one way or another. They have a time element. So she got mad. She put on the whole interview that she had access to, and people are saying, "Oh yeah, CBS, they're just edited so that they can make it lean to the right." So more outbreak happened with this particular story. So CBS went on and said, okay, we'll now do live broadcasts with that. We're not going to edit it, even though they always put the full unedited news packages on their YouTube channel. But I guess a lot of people don't understand that. So CBS, again, has to kiss the golden ring to make, Christie and Trump happy that, this stuff doesn't go on more. Again, it's again in control. Trump wants to control all the major networks, so every story, no matter what, that comes out on the airwaves, it used to be the airwaves, now streaming, whatever, that they all favor him and his cabinet. That I do not want anything negative about this. You want state-controlled media, just like they do in North Korea, and like they do in Russia. Okay, Trump wants to control the media, so everything and anything that comes out is in his favor. All right, moving on to our next story. This is weird. Now, you see that circle there? President Donald Trump's recent Oval Office has fueled a fresh wave of health rumors, and this has been all over the internet. If you look at this particular photograph of Trump, and you see that circle there, that looks like an LVAD package. It's battery operated. What that stands for is left ventricle assist device. It's under his jacket. Now, about this particular photograph, again, what I'm talking about is alleged. The White House press has not, press secretary Caroline has not come out and said that he's wearing that. Why this is sparking, a lot of conversation is, as you know, Trump disappeared from the public for a while, about a week, and then he came back out, and yes, he looks, full of vinegar and happiness and aggressive, and he's back being Trump like Trump's supposed to be. But when he raised his arm and you saw that thing behind his jacket there, that's what looks like what is appearing. And this is not Photoshop. There's been several press pictures of this. So while this has been going on, we've been getting a lot of internet discussions about what that is. So, and then there's also lumps on his shoulder where the cords run, and there's massive puffy welts that drew further attention. And there's been a lot of questions of whether he's trying to hide this heart device. A lot of people wear these. There's nothing to be ashamed of, though Trump has supposed to have had known heart issues. But his doctors, whom I don't know if he's paying them off or what, they're all saying, he's healthy as a horse. But we all know that the redness on his hands, the swelling on his feet has to do with, the man basically does have some heart issues. And there's been other, physicians out there on both sides of the fence, Democrats and Republicans, that's saying that, this Trump does appear to have something going on. So, and that speculation, of course, intensified when he disappeared from the limelight. Was he at that time having a surgical procedure to have this device, hooked up to him? We don't know because nobody's saying anything. But, Trump did go ahead and say that, this was all fake news. He finally had to come out and say something because there was a lot of discussion on it. He says this is another example of, the Democrats trying to say something. I had an exam back in April, and I'm in excellent health with no problems. So Is that true or is it not? Again, nobody is basically saying whether it is or whether it isn't. So, what are you going to do? You got to go on what the White House is saying. So, now, moving on with other news, job growth did slow sharply in August, and the unemployment rate rose to its highest level in nearly 4 years. Gee, do you think tariffs have anything to do with that? The latest jobs report, before I continue on, I wonder who Trump's going to fire now with this fake news and this terrible news. This is not true. But the latest job reports, along with downward revisions to previous month's data, does indicate a continued cooling in the United States labor market. This softening trend is likely to increase pressure on the Federal Reserve to consider an interest rate cut at its upcoming September meeting. Again, Trump does not want to have interest rates go up. He wants to have them go down. So, and he doesn't. I really don't think this guy understands economics. It's just like, continue on so we can go on and on and into further debt and go further and further into recession. But that's going to have some concerns. So year-over-year wages grew at only a 3.7% rate, which is down 0.2 percentage points from the previous month. Despite the deceleration, wage growth has been outpacing inflation for nearly 2 years, which typically occurs as productivity increases. So is that good news? Perhaps. But again, with less jobs out there, when you've got more people looking for work than there are employment, you've got problems. And of course, the feds are going to look at that. So you've got to take those things a lot with into consideration. So having said that, let's go ahead and at this point in time get into our top story. And our top story is, of course, we are going to be talking about what's going on with this situation with the Epstein files. Yes, we really just have to go ahead and discuss this because, this thing is just getting crazier and crazier, especially on both sides of the fence. You've got Republicans now more and more aligning with Democrats about releasing those Epstein files. And there's so much conspiracy theories going on out there. So a bipartisan group of lawmakers stood outside the United States Capitol this past Wednesday alongside nearly a dozen women who said they've been abused by the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And you can't blame them because of the fact of the matter is with all this going on, there is some truth to this matter. And Epstein, He did. He abused a lot of these women, and now they're all starting to come in and going out there and having discussions with the public about you've got to release those files. And it's not a hoax. And this included a direct plea from one of the survivors and to the president. President Trump, you have so much influence and power in this situation. Please use that influence and power to help us and to invite extended to him to the Oval Office to talk about this. And he's not going to do it. In fact, the matter is when they were having this press conference outside the U.S. Capitol, Trump, like a sixth grader that he is sometimes, he orders a jet fly over in that exact area so it would drown out this press conference. He ordered the military to fly military aircraft over that area, so with their, of course, loud jet engines to try to drown out the press conference. I don't want to have that press conference, so I order the military to go out and fly over this area, so they nobody can hear what they're talking about. That's Trump. Nothing negative about him. And these survivors went on to say, we are real human beings. This is real trauma. Yet just moments after those survivors spoke, President Donald Trump delivered his own remarks dismissing the whole thing as a political joke, and this is what the Democrats are trying to do. How could the Democrats be trying to do this, Mr. President, when your own Republicans that you have in the House and Senate are out there standing side by side with these women? Are they now Democrats or something? So we're having the most successful 8 months of any president ever. And I do question that as well. And now he's trying to get Johnson, and he's getting escalating pressure, the House Speaker, to prepare for these votes, to try to get this whole thing about releasing files shot down, because there are names in there that, he does not want to make public. So that's what's really going on. I will say this, that those Epstein files get more and more, controversial as time goes on. Even the MAGA base are saying release the files. And it's no secret by now, Trump's name is in there. Now, again, we don't believe at this point in time that Trump, even though his name is in there, has done anything illegal. Yes, he has associated with Jeffrey Epstein. We all know that. The photographs are there when Trump was much younger. And nobody is saying that Trump has done anything illegal. Nobody has come out and said that. There have been some women that said they have seen Trump there. Again, this is all alleged. We can't prove anything either way. We do know that Trump is doing everything he can not to have those files released, because there are a lot of people who have financially contributed to Trump's campaign that has been already stated that is on that list. Names are. So are some Democrats. I'm not going to hide that, There has been rumors that, a couple former presidents, we all know who we're talking about, is on that list as well. So now, among those lawmakers who took the podium to talk about getting these files released is Marjorie Taylor Greene. She was basically listed on there as well. So, and I thought I had there she is. There's Marjorie. Yes. Now, her support is a clear signal that the president won't soon be able to escape the scrutiny over this administration's handling of the Epstein investigation, because with Marjorie Taylor Greene out there supporting these women and saying release the files, that puts a little wave in Trump's discussion. This is a boiling point in American history, Greene said in a fiery speech in which she vowed to support the survivors in any way possible. And she even went on to a press conference discussion with CNN after the rally was over, and she said she spoke with Trump personally earlier that morning and urged him to host Epstein's victims in the Oval Office. He won't do that. And, Epstein survivors mark an extraordinary moment in this discussion and a months-long battle for his government to release additional documents and information related to the disgraced financier, Jeffrey Epstein, or as we all know, who's now dead. Speaker Mike Johnson, the GOP leaders in Congress attempt to quell the backlash over Trump's handling of the controversy. Republicans like Greene have breathed new life into the fight. Greene is one of 4 Republicans who have so far signed on to this week's bipartisan push to force Congress to require the White House to publicly disclose more information about that case. The effort, known as a discharge petition, is led by Republican Tom Massey of Kentucky, a fiercely independent Republican who frequently does have a little bit of spars with Trump. But both Greene and Massey argued that the matter should be above politics. They urged more of their GOP colleagues to back their resolution, allowing the measure to come to the floor for a vote. A major affront to Johnson's powers as Speaker. Now, there's over 200 Republicans who have not signed this discharge petition. We only need 2 of them to sign it, Massey said at a press conference where he vowed not to back down from the fight, as well as Marjorie Taylor Greene. Johnson has urged publicly and privately that Massey's discharge petition has been made a moot and unnecessary because of the House Oversight Committee's work, and he pointed Wednesday to more than the 33,000 documents released by the panel in less than 24 hours before. And, they think that should be enough, but there's others they're not releasing. And whether Trump's name is on those other docs, we will never know unless they are released. So, they're trying to, he says they're trying to weaponize the Epstein issue against Trump and the GOP in recent weeks. And of course, Trump is doing everything he can to get the focus off of the Epstein files. And as he tries to do other things like talk about, bringing some kind of a ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia, which that has failed. And he's trying to bring a ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinians, and that's failed. So we don't know. So it's just going to go on and on and on. Now, federal judges are also frustrated with the Supreme Court for increasingly overturning lower court rulings involving the Trump administration with little or no explanation, with some worried that practice is undermining the judiciary system at a very sensitive time. Some judges believe the Supreme Court, and in particular Chief Justice John Roberts, could be doing more to defend the integrity of their work as President Donald Trump and his allies harshly criticize those who rule against them, and as violent threats against judges are on the rise. In a rare interview with NBC News, a dozen federal judges appointed by Democratic and Republican presidents, including Trump, and serving around the country, pointed to a pattern they say has recently emerged. Lower court judges are handed contentious cases involving the Trump administration. They painstakingly research the law to reach their rulings. When they go against Trump, administration officials and allies criticize the judges in harsh terms. The government appeals the Supreme Court, and with its 6-3 conservative majority, everything they particularly work so hard at is shot down immediately. And then the Supreme Court, in emergency release, swiftly rejects the judge's decision, and with little or no explanation. In other words, Trump has bought the Supreme Court. President Donald Trump on Wednesday urged the Supreme Court to step into the fray over this emergency tariff, putting the centerpiece of his economic agenda in the hands of the justices who have mostly backed his sweeping view of executive power, according to a copy of the appeal that was obtained by CNN. Trump is pressuring the justices to overturn a lower court ruling that found his administration acted unlawfully by imposing many of his sweeping import tariffs, and on and on and on. And these district judges, their point is very valid. We have seen this. Case in point, the attempted closure of Alligator Alcatraz. And I'll be talking about that here in just a few moments. It is so true. Everything that these judges do and rule, whether it's in favor or not in favor of Donald Trump, he pisses and moans and groans immediately, and he tries to rush it right up to the Supreme Court, where the majority there are on Trump's side because he appointed them there, and everything is overturned. They look for every loophole that they possibly can that, Trump, executive privilege, executive privilege, executive privilege. That's what they fall back on with no other explanation except the president has executive privilege. And Trump smiles and broadly goes on with his authoritarian rule of the United States. So, you got a point, The president is beginning to get more and more standalone power, bypassing Congress to the point to where he can act and do it and say and do anything he wants without Congress having to intervene. It's going to get to the point to why should we have a Congress and why should we have a Senate? You've got King Trump, who has the final say and can act and do on everything that he wishes, because Project 2025, that's the way they wanted it. So the Trump administration is also opening a new camp with a notorious state prison in Louisiana. And this is kind of scary. A new camp with a notorious state prison in Louisiana to house undocumented migrants accused of committing crimes. I'm going to use that word, alleged committing crimes. Officials announced just the last 48 hours that the new detention center called Camp 57 will be at the country's largest maximum security prison, the Louisiana State Penitentiary, commonly known as Angola, which is an 18,000-acre facility located an hour north of Baton Rouge. It will have the capacity to house over 400 men. Louisiana Republican Governor Jeff Landry said today at a recent news conference. When I say today, I'm talking about back here on Wednesday. Half of whom will be sent there by the end of September. Very soon, folks. Administration officials say Camp 57 is designed to hold the worst of the worst and pointed to it as a sign of success amid their ongoing campaign against both illegal immigration and violent crime, both of which is a key to Trump's agenda. So, again, define violent crimes. When you are rounding up 3,000 migrants a day in this country, the United States, and none of them are fact-checked other than they have this list and they say they're here illegally. They may not have done any crime whatsoever other than maybe they got in here illegally, but they are contributing to the commerce of the United States, to the production of the United States by working in these fields. They're not hurting anything except trying to put food on the table for their family, and yet they're being rounded up and they're going to be sent to, this particular camp among other camps. There's a new camp, even a detention facility opening up here in Florida, which I'll talk about here in just a moment. But, the facility's name is a nod to Landry, the state's 57th governor. A spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security mentioned it is being repurposed from an existing facility that was not in use. Camp 57 is just not a typical ICE detention facility that you may see in other states. Somewhere else in this country, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristen Noem said, instead, this facility will hold the most dangerous of criminals that have been out there hammering and harming individuals in this country. I beg to see what that's going to actually, whom they're going to be and what crimes they actually have considered, done. Though Camp 57 will be isolated from the prison's normal criminal population, the Louisiana prison system has been accused of forcing incarceration of individuals at Angola to work in very dangerous conditions with little or no pay, including accusations that inmates were made to pick vegetables by hand in temperatures of over 100 degrees at what was once a slave plantation. Oh, my God. So Noem said that the prison's famous reputation was absolutely a reason officials chose it as location for Camp 57. So, again, look how happy these people are. Look at them smile, You've got our Attorney General up there, Pam Bondi. You've got Christie and the governor of Louisiana. Aren't they just all smiling and so happy that we're going to be locking up the worst of the worst? And, of course, all the MAGA people out there, yeah. But again, when you're rounding up 3,000 migrants a day, how many of these people are actually being vetted that are actually, quote unquote, dangerous criminals? Now, I'm in favor of locking up dangerous criminals if, in fact, they are dangerous criminals. If they're just simple people that did maybe come in illegally and they're just trying to make a buck, help their family out, that have no criminal record, and you're putting them in a camp like this, shame on you. But we'll just have to wait and see if, in fact, what we have going on here. Because the fact of the matter is we will never know. Because, again, Trump is trying to get the Supreme Court to do away with due process for these migrants that are being rounded up. He just wants to, round them up and ship them out or lock them up. They don't need any due process. And that's, he's even said that, he wants to even have that handed on to American citizens, that might be rounded up. If, let's just do away with due process. We don't need any trial. We don't need to have them go before a judge. We just need to get them the hell out of here. So, yeah, scary, isn't it? President Donald Trump also said on Tuesday he's going to move the military's U.S. Space Command to Huntsville, Alabama, to undoing a decision by the Biden administration. Again, this is Trump. Anything that Biden ever touched, did, or talked about, he's reversing it because he does not like the Biden. He does not like Democrats. It's my way or the highway. So, they tried to keep the space operations in Colorado Springs, Colorado. The U.S. Space Command, or SpaceCom, is a joint command separate from the United States Space Force military branch, which is tasked with leading national security operations in space. That includes overseeing satellites and networks that provide missile warnings, communications, and in-space surveillance, while also tracking orbital debris and potential threats to the United States and allied spacecraft. We initially selected Huntsville for the Spacecom headquarters, but those plans were wrongfully obstructed by the Biden administration, Trump said. In announcing the move, Trump also criticized the state of Colorado, which has Democrats in its statewide elected office, saying the problem I have with Colorado, and when he was asked why are you moving it, one of the big problems is that they do mail-in voting. Several red states also allow some form of mail-in voting, including Utah, which, like Colorado, has automatic mail-in voting. Meanwhile, Trump's officials blasted Trump's decision. The state's governor, Jared Polis, called the move a waste of taxpayer dollars and an inconvenience to military families that must and are being forced to relocate, which was the permanent locations for Spacecom. Now, I'm going to chime in on this. I can see one positive reason for moving it to Huntsville, Alabama, and that is because of the Gulf and the ease of moving equipment and rockets and things like that from there to Kennedy Space Center. And of course, as you all know, we have an Air Force base right here in Florida that's very close to the Kennedy Space Center, which has now been renamed Space Force, where it used, to be Patrick Air Force Base. Now it's Patrick Space Force. So that I can agree with. It is moving operations a little bit closer. But in this report, Trump said it's going to create 30,000 new jobs. That's not true. Approximately 1,200 personnel will have to be relocated from Colorado to Huntsville, Alabama for this moving operation, as statistics have shown. But it's not going to create 30,000 new jobs. Again, Trump just loves to throw numbers out there to make it look bigger than things than it really is. He loves the word, the most ever, the most fantastic, billions, That's what he likes to do. But I can see the point of keeping operations a little closer, but they're even in Colorado. It was working to the fact that because of the technical innovations that we have today, it was still just running very smoothly. But again, this is a political move. It's again Trump taking a slab back at Biden. It's taking a slab back at Colorado because of the he says it's mail-in voting, which again red states do that too. But Trump just likes to shoot from the hip and shoot his mouth off and say things whatever he would like to do. So. You can see where we're going here with this. Again, this is more of a political move than it is a move of need. There is some, like I said, there are some positive things about this. I believe in transparency. I can see where being more close to the Kennedy Space Center operations, that this is probably a good move in that effect. But basically, that's all I see out of it. So now let's quickly move to some Florida news. Governor Ron DeSantis is back in the news as his Florida Surgeon General, Joseph Ladapo, has said this past week that the state will work to eliminate all vaccine mandates. Now, this is where we're going with this. Remember, I talked earlier about what's going on with Robert Kennedy and, the health department there and CDC saying that vaccines just isn't really all necessary anymore. Well, Florida became the first state to completely eliminate all mandates that vaccinations are needed. It's now going to be a personal family decision. And this includes all of those vaccinations. You can now send your kid to school without having any vaccinations, and they cannot make you have any vaccinations. There, of course, all the Magna people stood up and applauded. Yeah, that's right, man. So every last one of them, this says that, if you want to have your kids get vaccinated, good for you. If you don't want to have your kids not get vaccinated, good for you. He said the Florida Department of Health will work in partnership with the governor. He said forcing of vaccine mandates is wrong and immoral. And he goes, who am I as a government or anyone else, as a man standing here right now to tell you that you should put in your body, Ladapo said. Who am I to tell you what your child should put in their body? And I don't have that right, and no should anybody else. So Florida requires currently vaccinations for students going to public schools. The requirements are outlined on the Florida Health website. That's going to go away. The state is not banning vaccinations. You just decide if you want to do it, great. If you don't, then don't. And I hope you all make informed decisions. Now, again, I understand that parents have the right to decide what to do and what not to do with their children. I get that. I do. Again, I have 13 grandchildren. I understand that, that there are some things in this lifetime that you want to have control with your child. Now, this is the point, and I said this earlier. If you don't get your kids vaccinated, okay, you don't get them vaccinated. If they go to school and they are embedded with, some kind of virus, be it measles, mumps, whatever the case may be, and it's an infectious virus that can spread to other children, and those children who are vaccinated, maybe they won't get sick. But what about those other children that were not vaccinated? And then you've got a contagious outbreak, just like it happened in Texas with measles. And who's to blame? Those kids that did not get any vaccinations. They came to school, they were sick, and they spread it to everybody else. Or you have a child that is not vaccinated and they get sick at home, and then they get, say, extremely sick to where you have to hospitalize them. And then you're going to say, what happened? Why is my child sick? I don't understand. Well, because you made the decision not to get any vaccinations. Now it's on you. So, to me, getting kids vaccinated before they enter the public school system and they start getting around other kids makes sense. But now if you're not going to get your kid vaccinated and all hell breaks loose, then it's mom and dad, it's on you. So just saying, you should try to make some informed decisions. A federal appeals court panel on Thursday also put on hold a lower court judge's order to wind down operations of the Immigration Detention Center known as Alligator Alcatraz. Yeah, first it was going to be closed down. Now it's not. And I'm sure Trump is just extremely happy. And as they also have opened up another facility just south of Jacksonville, too, another detention center operation is just opened up there. So 3 judge panel in Atlanta decided by a 2-1 vote to stay the federal judge's order pending the outcome of the appeal, saying it was in the public interest. How the hell is Alligator Alcatraz in the public interest? So there was a lawsuit filed that because this is on Native American land, and it's also a federal preserve, that this facility should be closed because it's actually dumping waste and stuff, everything else, into the Everglades. But this panel said this facility is in the public interest. How the hell that is, I have no clue. So U.S. District Judge Kathleen Williams in Miami issued a preliminary injunction last month ordering the operations of the facility to be closed. It didn't happen. It was temporarily. And now that it has been overruled, the facility is going to start taking intake again with more detainees. So that's going to happen very, very quickly. And again, there was a lot of attempts to get it shut down, but it did not happen. So there you go. That is my podcast for this week. A little bit shorter than other normal podcasts that I've done, but I got everything in for you on the news, as you just seen there. Again, we will see what happens next week, but there's always a lot of news for me to give to you, and I do this on a Saturday so you can get it out there, so you can hear about the news before you even see or watch it on television on Monday. So again, this is Roy with Right as Left, and again, you try to have a good week. Until next time, take care.